Hello, this is Ethan, and this is my reflective presentation number one. A few broad themes or questions that I'm looking for throughout this is one, my types of stress and my extroversion versus introversion, because I sometimes border between both of them, so I'll be interested to see what I get. Summarizing my results for my IPI report, or IPIP report. The first one, the John A. Johnson one. I scored 47% on my extroversion with high levels of assertiveness and activity level. This is pretty accurate, I'd say. I'm pretty assertive. I like to speak out, and I don't mind leading activities or groups in tasks and stuff like that. At my job, I have that role, so it's pretty chill. My activity level is that I'm fast paced and live a busy life, which is also true. I balance a lot of different activities and stuff like that in and out of work, and then also obviously doing school, stuff like that. I scored relatively high on agreeableness, and sympathy was my highest on the agreeableness chart, which is interesting. I am definitely agreeable, I would say, conversationally and just talking to regular people. I don't really hold people to fact or standard as I expect myself to, if that makes sense. And then conscientiousness, I scored 75 total with high levels of self-efficacy, dutifulness, and self-discipline, which I would say is accurate. I have pretty high levels of self-discipline, or I put a lot of energy into my self-discipline, and dutifulness, at least in workplace or job sense, I feel a pretty large pull of duty to do my expected tasks and things like that for whatever organization I'm working for, just as a person myself. Like I said, low neuroticism, 13 is what I got. 22 anxiety, 38% depression, 44% self-conscious. I'm pretty introspective, I would say, and I think that's what would lend itself to these sort of statistics. Openness to experience, I'm pretty open, although this says 37%. Says my imagination is 0, which, I mean, for the sake of workplace and stuff like that, I'd probably agree. Artistic interest, 64. Intellect is at 83. And liberalism is at 58. I'm all down for those new ideas. I don't discriminate. Let me see. And then for the Jungian-Myers-Briggs personality test, I scored an INTJ, which I've taken this test a few times throughout my life, and I've scored the same practically every time. Maybe once something different, but I can't remember. But for the majority, this has been what I usually get. I have high self-confidence, and I'm into strategic thinking, which I would characterize as accurate. Socially, this reflects me pretty accurately. Often reserved and prefer solitude or the company of few friends, which is how my social life is. I basically hang out with a few of my close friends, and then it's not that I'm not social outside of those times, but it's just not overly extroverted in that way. emphasis on logical ways of thinking, clear vision of the future, which will come up later in my goals, but I have a very strong sense of my future, the steps I'm taking, things like that. I'm pretty long term planned, like ahead, if that makes sense. For the internal locus of control, I tended towards a healthy sense of agency. It says that I landed in between internal and external, but my outlook places you with a strong sense of agency, which I agree with. I see most things as I can make an impact. I can. It's not impress my control, but I can use my control for like a goal or like a given task or whatever. For the Machiavellian test, I scored a 63 out of 100, which is 1 over the internet average, I believe. And then, although compared to undergraduates at university and adults at Pixie, or in the studies in 2009, these numbers are a lot lower. It looks like 15, 17. So I don't know what that means, but I don't think these studies are super decisive. And then for the RIA SEC markers, my scores for the 6 basic interests are, the high 3, I should say, is investigative, enterprising, and social, coming in at 25, 20, and 18. The interesting thing about this is I followed the link to onetonline.org, and it basically gives you a chance to plug these 3 types into a search and look for careers, and the only career occupation that is available for me is a instructional coordinator, which is pretty lame, but it's also pretty broad, so I'll give it that. It's fine. I did look on Indeed as well while we were talking about this, and it says like for things in this category, or I looked up INTJ, jobs types and stuff like that, and Indeed has a search function that works for that, and it just says like research analysis, project manager, software developer, all like sort of not front of house or like hospitality business stuff. It's more back of house analytical, logistical jobs and stuff like that. But let's see, suitable career, yeah, as I said, it was just that one for the website. And then burnout, I show many signs of being burned out, or I don't show many signs of being burned out, I would agree with this assessment. Number one, I do border on burning out sometimes. However, right now, my internal locus of control and my agency have been keeping me going. It says I'm somewhat stressed, as I indicated earlier. I think it's just because I'm handling school work and trying to lift and be physical and stuff like that. But that's chill. Some stress never hurt anybody, I don't think. For my overall, I would say that most of the personality tests support each other and don't contradict. In the first one, it said I was bordering on extroversion and introversion, and the second one said I was fully introverted. But I honestly understand why I got those results, as like as a person I'm very introverted. However, um, like I don't lack the uh, skills to be extroverted or like talk to a lot of people or be in a crowd or whatever. Um, but other than that, all of them pretty much lined up. Just achievement striving, sense of just like dutifulness, like I said before. And this kind of lends itself to the career I'm going into, supply chain management, very analytical and statistical and things like that. So, despite being sympathetic and modest and agreeable, I will probably be relying on my other personality traits and skills when it comes to my job and stuff like that. Main source of stress. This is a question for my stress reaction. My main source of stress would just be sometimes it's external from work, so it's having to lift after work and then doing obviously homework and studies, as well as just living family life, all that kind of stuff. Or I have some management issues at my job that cause like hindrance stressors, where we don't get information in a timely manner, or we have inaccurate goals or tasks to complete, or like yeah, that's really about it. I don't experience a lot of stressors. It's just people stressors. Sometimes people's personalities can be sort of abrasive or counter to work culture, but that's not too crazy. For career planning and SMART goals, my two goals are pretty future oriented. Well, one's current oriented, but also future oriented for my second one. Let me just get to them really quick. But for my first goal, I want to work in management or supervising until I can get at least 5 years of work experience. The reason is that it's obviously relevant for my future work career in my degree, which is supply chain management. So I would prefer getting management experience over supervising, sort of back end over front end experience. However, either sort of lends itself to that sort of future, so it doesn't quite bother me as much. I do have a position right now that I'm working at already, so hopefully I can get those 5 years of experience as I leave college, or 1 year after I leave college. For my second, or the reason for this obviously is to build skills and the experience to get used to the management role, understand the work culture. As like I'm obviously very relatively new to this, very relatively new. I'm very new to this as my second job or third job. But yeah, lots to learn. And then my second goal is, following this, I obviously plan to get, my goal is to get a job in supply chain management through my degree, and I would like to work until I can find an organization with a good work culture, obviously employees and coworkers to work with, and good management that obviously gives me a doable, enjoyable job with good job satisfaction and compensation. I think that's pretty reasonable, because I want to, through this job, start like, investing, saving, all the future oriented things. I want to buy property so I can like leverage some renting, because a lot of goals, a lot of things I want to do in the future. Vacations, obviously, travel the world, but I do not see myself working forever. I'll say that. So those are my SMART goals, and then job and work. So what did the RIA SEC assessment reveal? Any relevant personality findings? Not more than the first one. I feel like what type of tasks and roles I fit into. Like I said before, when I checked the types of jobs, there weren't a lot, which is okay, it's fine. But not a lot of positions for those. I would like to work in any organization. It doesn't really matter to me so much as I'm doing an instrumental part in their mission, and like it's satisfying to me, I suppose. A poor work environment I'd be in would probably be a super social work environment where I'm constantly having to converse with other people and deal with a lot of emotional situations and things like that, as it's more emotionally or mentally exhausting or taxing. But my stress profile and my preferences don't really lend me to not working in any specific industry besides the ones I previously mentioned and stuff like that. But would I use these as an assessment for hiring, coaching, or employment? I'd say the possible benefits for something like the INTJ test or the ISEC would be you get a app description of obviously whoever you're employing, and I don't think it would be a terrible choice to implement some sort of things like those two, or maybe the locus of control test, just to get an accurate idea of who you're employing. However, I do think there's probably a lot of ethical concerns when it comes to using this as reasons for non-hiring or discrimination, so I'd be wary of anything like that. But other than that, I think these accurately represented me, and it was useful to sort of reflect on the ideas of your internal self and what you want to do with those. So yeah.